Dominique, you tell me when you're ready, and we'll get rolling, okay? Appreciate y'all being here. We're finally, again, trying to get back on a actual Tuesday 10 a.m. schedule. Summer's been a little crazy, so appreciate you working with us. We'll get through some of the big news and notes, and then, of course, we'll take your questions. First time I've been in front of you since the grant funding. I know I've talked with some of you one way or the other, but obviously want to formally say, number one, how excited we are about $55 million of what I really believe to be several projects that will have lasting impacts on this community for years to come. So very, very excited about that. Excited to get going with our team. That this is half the battle. Maybe the $55 million is more than half the battle, but we got to get these things going, and that takes a lot of time and effort and energy from our team. So we're going to start having some of those preliminary meetings, starting with the Hollis T. Williams meeting internally about what's next. So really excited to get that going. And again, $39.7 million of the infrastructure projects, which is Hollis T. Williams, which was $25.1 million. Fricker Resource Center renovation project was $5.5 million, and the Port of Pensacola was right around $9 million as well. So those were the three we put in under those buckets, and we were obviously extremely thrilled to see that we were able to get all three funded. The revitalization projects, the second bucket of this Hurricane Sally funding, we were able to actually ended up with more than we had asked for, $5 million for the acquisition preparation with Baptist Healthcare Campus. We had asked for $5 million, we received that, and we had asked for $2.8 million in terms of Brownsville revitalization on Cervantes there between Pace and the city limit line, and we asked for $2.8 and got $5 million. So those are my kind of grants when we apply for $2.8 and get more, but certainly that will there's plenty to do there to help lift up that community. That and it was a hometown revitalization built around the commercial corridor. The fact that it was 51% commercial is what that particular bucket was designated for. And I think we can do a lot of different things between land acquisition, facade grants, all sorts of programs that could bring some more life back to what was historical downtown corridor, as well as to provide amenities and quality of life for people in the Brownsville area. So really excited about that. And then, of course, the Rebuild Florida Housing Repair and Replacement Program was able to get $5.8 million. So we actually had our first general meeting about that with our housing department yesterday. So again, very excited about all of those things, and really, really looking forward to getting those going. The budget, the proposed budget that is now going to council for fiscal year 2024 is posted on our website, cityofpensacola.com. I just had to have Rick ask me on the radio when it's coming, and then I said, well, I think it's coming sometime soon, and then it was on my desk when I got in today. So you'll see, it's about the number in there proposed overall is $313 million. You'll notice a jump from 277. And Amy Lavoie can speak better to the particulars of it, but understand that a significant portion of that jump is part of the airport fund. And again, I'll let her speak the science of that. But ultimately, that you may see, you'll wonder why we have a $313 million budget and then a proposed budget going down in the next couple of years. There's just some transaction kind of things that with the airport that have that number. You see that kind of jump, and when you look at it, you'll see. But it's on cityofpensacola.com. It's on our website. If you search budget documents, it's up there and posted right now. Ribbon cutting for Cecil T. Hunter is this Friday, July 21st at 11:30, and that's for the pool house. Of course, the pool has been open, but we were able to officially get the pool house open, and so really looking forward to that. And of course, that is right on the line with District 5 and District 6, and has been a part of the downtown community and those neighborhoods for years and years. So excited to get that place enhanced. I've got a mayor's cleanup Saturday, July 29th. That area is Eastgate, Parker Circle, and Broadview Farms, including portions of surrounding neighborhoods. So this is one's a little, make sure you check City of Pensacola, or you should get something in the mail from us that designates your area. So make sure you look at your street for that. And then we wanted to let you know that the Pensacola Fire Department has a training drill at the airport, which is a live fire training drill. We're going to do the best we can to be out in front of the phone calls that they see an airplane on fire. This is planned. It's starting tomorrow through Friday, and it'll take place most of the day. And again, Chief Craner, has more detail, but ultimately, I mean, it's going to be live fire in something that looks like a fuselage and all of that. So once we had gotten that news on Monday, we said we better let our media partners know that, and certainly want to get that word out there so we don't have anybody in a panic seeing a plane on fire at the airport. So there'll be firefighters in gear. Trucks will be spraying the fire as part of the training drill. And I mean, it's a great benefit to us. Obviously, this is something that we never want to have happen, but we want to be prepared for. So the fact that we get this opportunity to do an enhanced training, something that's hands-on for our firefighters, I know is great. Let's see. Yeah, it's required by the FAA, and it's completed annually. So anyway, more to come on that. And I know we had some conversations whether there was going to be whether there would be some media access to that, but we can follow up with Casey on what we can or can't do. Obviously, there's some regulations that are outside of our purview there, so we'll see what we can do. And then one other follow-up, just got off the phone with Chief Randall. Our second, we have one CRA officer in place. Our second CRA officer will start Monday. So we'll have both of those positions filled. And again, with their focus on more of the evenings and the weekends. So that is all I have, and happy to take any questions you have.
On the budget, did you go? Is there going to be pay raises or that type of thing?
Yeah, one of the things we did when I got in was looked at a salary study. You guys have heard me mention over the recent months a salary study and an FTE study. So understand there's really two parts to how you evaluate compensation within any organization. The one is what's the pay. That's pretty clear. And of course you have to look at what your full-time equivalents are in comparison. How many people are in a certain department in the city compared to other cities. If you're because sometimes that can impact positively or negatively on pay as well. So we have both of those. I know those are in the final stages. Those have not gotten to me yet. I know Evergreen has been finishing that salary study up, but we should have something shortly. But what you'll see is we're anticipating. I think Rick asked me a couple weeks ago, really more of a philosophical question about the budget. And what you'll see is maintaining the things that we have and working from the inside out to make sure that we make this the best place we can to work and be a great city to work in. Because at the end of the day, this is a people business, and probably our department directors are tired of hearing me saying that the vast majority of what I see as department directors or assistant directors or supervisors of the job, it's managing people. I mean, that's at the end of the day, if you can get the best performance you can out of anybody, whether you're in public sector or private sector, and make sure that they're happy to come to work every day, then a lot of other things take care of themselves in terms of our performance, in terms of what we provide to the taxpayer. So when I say we're going to work inside out, that's why it's important to me, because we can have as much initiatives, as much grant money, all these things as we want, and if we don't have great people working here and people that are engaged and happy to work here, that makes all of those things extremely difficult. So you'll see again a philosophical focus on certain areas where we have not made any determinations on what those areas are. If there's a compensation delta, we have maintained our expectation is not that would be something that would happen overnight. That there could be, depending on what the data says, it could be a 1, 2, 3 year kind of plan if we feel like there's a department that or departments areas or specifics within departments that would need to be emphasized. So we'll take a very comprehensive, meticulous look at what would need to happen in year 1, year 2, year 3 as it moves forward. So can't speculate on that yet until I've seen the citywide data.
Mayor, could you talk about improvements to City Hall and what's that process look like? Are there hazards in there that should be fixed? sooner rather than later?
Yeah, we've been in the season of, between Amy Tootle and Public Works and our office and administration, we've been in quite a season of trying to, again, catch up to maintaining the things that we have. And that's really mostly been certainly outside of this building. But this building isn't immune to that, and this is the heartbeat of city operations. And look, I get it. I mean, this is the first I believe it's the first structural analysis either since the building's been built or it's at least been 30 plus years. And look, in government, I would imagine that people that have been in my position before, councils that have been in my position before, you're here to provide for the taxpayer, for the citizens. So sometimes the building that you're in may not be at the top of your list, or it might be something that would get cut kind of quick in the sake of higher priority items. So that certainly makes sense to me that maybe we've gone this far, or we've taken maybe a little too long to get things going. But the good news is we've had the analysis done, and there's some work that needs to be done right now. There's some that needs to be done within the next 12 months, 24 months. There's even prescriptions for things in the next 8 years. I want to say out front, there's nothing in terms of foundational structural integrity, but it doesn't mean that these are not just aesthetics. I mean, these are structural things that need to be done. And really, and I know our council would agree, I know our staff agrees, need to take precedent over the aesthetic things and understand there was money budgeted in ARPA to redo council chambers, and first and second floors we've had a real emphasis on. You can look around this. It's been a couple years since this room's been updated, since the first floor's been updated, and it's where we do business with city residents. So I don't want to make it sound that modernizing and improving the facilities of which we interact with our taxpayer means nothing, because it certainly does. But it can't take precedent over the structural integrity of where everybody works here every day. And so I'm confident that it's not going to have to be a pick and choose, that there's enough funding that had already been designated with ARPA, and I'll work with finance and with the council to try to fix a delta of about $500,000 that would allow us to do both.
So we're still kind of planning phase. I mean, nothing's set in stone in terms of any one improvement over the other.
We do have a list, and we can get to the analysis as well of what we're going to get done. But point is we're not going to be waiting around on the structural portion of this. We had already been making headway on the improvements to chambers, to Hagler Basin, Wibbs, the lobby. We'd already been working with professionals on that because the money had been set aside. But we're just taking a little quick pause and certainly allowing the structural things that need to happen first to kind of take precedent. So we may do them both at the same time, but our stopping point really was once we got the analysis back, and then we saw the delta of funding between what had been set aside and what needs to get there. We obviously got to get that in place first, but that part of it will not slow us down on the structural side. So we've received the analysis. We'll continue to move forward on the improvements that need to be made, and we can get you the more itemized list of those.
Okay. Mayor, the city's set to award the airport terminal contract, I guess tomorrow,
Yep.
to council.
Yeah.
Would you give us an update on the scope of this contract, the timeline, the funding sources?
Well, yeah. I can help you on the funding sources. I would defer to Matt to get into the line items of the scope of what they're asking offhand. But at the end of the day, it's funding for strictly design. No part of construction, of course, but it's the funding for the design of the terminal. And you may recall when I got in, there had been conversations for at least a year, and I'm not sure how much further back, about getting close to having funding, working with FDOT, and kind of getting down to the end, and then the funding wasn't there. So we really moved, even though it was just a couple $1 million that we were looking for from FDOT. That was one of our first priorities getting in, because we knew that without design, we have no terminal. So if we were sitting here today and the design had not started, we're one more year behind on the terminal. So it was truly the first domino. So was able to work. That was really the first project I've got to work hand in hand with FDOT on, and certainly made our intentions known that was our top priority, and they were able to work with us and get us $2 million of funding. The final, I believe that the final dollar amount will be negotiated amongst whoever wins design. So, but we expect that to be the significant portion of the design cost, and then of course anything over that I would imagine would come out through airport funding.
Have you or the airport management signaled a sense of urgency in this process?
Well, I mean, if I can speak personally, I took, I think, 16 meetings in about 36 hours in Washington, D.C. about construction. So, and what I don't want to have happen is be where we were with design, which is I don't want this design to be completed and it start to collect dust while we wait on potential funding for construction, right? Because I expect that on the timeline we're on now, barring something unforeseen, that I believe the design will start to be, or would be underway in the fall. And and again, we'll have to see what comes back from the winning designer. But if we were to guesstimate a year, a little bit more on the full design, that means technically by the time you would go bid out, everything else, you could start by the end of 24, maybe early 25, with construction, but not if $70 million isn't there. So we're working in 2023 with eyes on 2025. To make sure that when that design rolls off the printer, we're ready to move as urgently as possible, because we know we need it. I mean, we know what the numbers are. John, you've seen 18% if you take the first part of July of last year, this year. I mean, you're talking about 8,000 more passengers in a 10-day period versus last year. And the stat I always rattle off, 1 million more people going through these same 11 gates than we had 10 years ago. So we haven't seen any more gates. We just see 1 million more people a year.
I want to follow up to that. Does the city collect data on passengers using PNS? Do you know where they're going? Do you know what type of travel they're leisure, business?
Yes. I mean, if you were to ask me a specific route or demographic right now, I wouldn't be able to give it to you. But yes, we have detailed, and as well as Visit Pensacola. I mean, I remember from my perspective as board chair, we know where people are coming from, what percentage of them are flying and driving. I mean, there's a lot of data out there nowadays to be able to see who's coming into Pensacola and how long. I mean, I remember when I was there, maybe the numbers changed. The average stay in the Pensacola area is 5.9 days. And so that's different than maybe a larger city that you may stay a lesser time. When you're a beach community, you typically might, rent a condo or a hotel for a week, or have family come down. So, it is kind of fascinating going through all, I'm kind of a data nerd in that way too. And I like to know kind of generally what the average Pensacola tourist, looks like and what they want. So.
What does this kind of record passenger growth tell you? I mean, what do you take away from that?
Well, I think that we're, again, a city in demand. I think, understand, we're about a 75, at the height of COVID, we were about an 80% drive market, meaning 4 out of 5 people that visited Pensacola were driving. So if you think about that, and you think about that we have 1 million more passengers, so if only 20 to 25% of the people who visit here are flying, and we have 1 million more passengers than we had in a decade, you think about pent-up demand and how many more people would fly if there was more convenience. So if you take in a market like Fort Myers is it's the opposite. Because of its geographic location, about 75% of people fly there. So if you were to add more gates, is the demand there? We know we have pent-up demand that someone who's driving from Houston or Dallas or Nashville, if there was an easier, cheaper, more convenient option, nonstop option to fly, we know we can help. We have pent-up demand. So, and if we stay at 20%, we got 1 million more passengers going in 11 gates than we had 10 years ago. So, this design is focused on 5 more gates, which again, you can do the math. Would up our capacity by 50%. And not only is it more people coming through security checkpoint, but it's more. It's really. That will afford us more options of nonstops, and even when we have seasonal flights from Ohio and Minnesota, United had one out of Pittsburgh. We've had some come in and out of here. Remember, that's tapping into areas that would never otherwise drive all the way down here. So if we have a flight that you can get on from Cincinnati or Pittsburgh, and you're here in 2 hours. That's a whole nother market of people that would have otherwise gone somewhere else that might be more convenient. So when I say it really is, this is a choke point, I think, in the next few years, because we know that the demand is there, and if we don't do anything, then we're going to be feeling it. I think we'll see it in the data. We'll see some kind of plateau. So it's time. It's really beyond time to get this up and going, and our airport team has been diligent on it. I know we've been working as hard as we can, and in those meetings, meeting with people on the transportation committee, looking for a portion of that to be funded federally, as well as with FAA officials in Washington. So we've done everything we can so far, and we'll keep knocking the door as loud as we can.
Are there any new airlines or partnerships between cities on the horizon? I mean, things like that United deal you mentioned?
Yeah, the day-to-day conversations typically run through the airport. I know those are ones that they're having every week, whether it be a new carrier or it be extension of service. As you can imagine, when you get stopped on the street asking, questions, it's either parking or, what kind of flights can we get? And, can we get a nonstop to X, Y, and Z? Actually, when Mayor Hayward was in office and I just started a visit, it was a cool experience. I was able to go on a trip to meet with Air Canada. At the time was looking at a potential nonstop to Toronto, at Pensacola. And it was interesting to see, not just to be part of that kind of team going up to sell the city, but more so just how formulaic and data driven, as you can imagine, the airlines are. At the end of the day, we can meet with them, but they've got to see those numbers bear out, what they can get per passenger, per carrier, so there's a lot of formula that goes into what that interest is, but the good news is our phone still rings. So, but I think at the end of the day, 5 more gates changes that conversation when those people do call.
Last Thursday, the the sheriff had his gun violence
Yep.
roundtable. Part of the meeting was to talk about what worked and what didn't work well with Operation Brownsville. What do you see that worked well, and what could have been done better?
Well, not being as intimately involved as the sheriff, I would probably defer to whatever recommendations he has. That being said, the process you just outlined, I think, is the correct one. What we know is anything that has a finite amount of time, a certain number of days or certain number of weeks, it becomes difficult to define mission accomplished, right? I mean, was it mission accomplished during a certain amount of time? What happens in Brownsville from this point forward? I think those are things that we should monitor. And, I would certainly listen to Chief Randall and the sheriff on what their takeaways are, because they're in it every day. So I'd hate to say what I think we should or shouldn't do. That's their expertise. But I think we have to look at whatever all of those options are. I hope that the shot spotter technology coming in and that partnership, the real-time crime center coming in, are just general across our city and across our community improvements in public safety, and continued collaboration with the Sheriff's Department that we didn't have previously. So, I imagine those two tangible items will really probably build our ability to have more collaboration with the Sheriff's Department and the city, because we'll be seeing them more and more often and working with them more and more often. So we're always open to whatever ideas, if we think it's something that can improve public safety in the city. But what it really also got me thinking about is, and coincidentally, is the tie-in to what we do in Brownsville. We should be using that data and opportunities for improvement, or maybe something that didn't work, as we start to invest millions of dollars into the area, right? Not necessarily in public safety, but what does the community need? We can make assumptions, but I'll be really curious to continue to follow really what happens in the area after, and what our police officers are seeing in the area after, and see if there's any other improvements that we can make. But as I said, in terms of prescriptions moving forward, I would defer to the sheriff and the chief.
Yesterday at the CRA meeting, there was some talk about the Pelican drop.
Yes.
Where does that stand now?
Yeah, I have a meeting scheduled with DIB, and what I said in the meeting yesterday was I'm a huge fan of any of these abilities to bring vibrancy to our community, whether it's the South Market for Plaza Ferdinand and DIB, and getting that going. That's been a great success. They continue to add more and more vendors down there, and they have a lot of pent-up demand. So any of those opportunities we have to make this a cool place to live, and I think those are that. But I also think it's probably time to look at, how the event is, what is the event itself, the hours. I know there's been some preliminary conversations with our fire and police. My intent is to continue, if it's feasible, to continue moving forward with trying to make it happen. But, with new administration and, we're wanting to meet with DIB and the stakeholders in this and make sure that it's probably a good time for a pulse check of exactly how this event should go. Even down to, you may have heard Walker mention, even down to the Pelican itself, which may not even be in a condition to be up there, in the middle of the night. So we got to look at all that. So I just didn't want our examination of it to give off the impression that we're not interested in being supportive. But we are at this point. But let's see what's the hurdle and what's the cost, all those things we'll look at. But my goal always is to go in with an open mind about something that I think brings vibrancy to the community, and until we figure out at some point it's unfeasible. Yeah.
Another question, on the council agenda Thursday, there's an item adding council members to the city's insurance plan where they don't have to pay the premium like a normal city employee. I guess what's the history, what's the logic of that?
Yeah, so as you know, and I don't know it off the top of my head to the exact dollar amount, I have a lot of respect for people who run for city council and who sit up there. At the end of the day, I can guarantee you, whatever the pay doesn't nearly match. If it were be boiled down to an hourly rate, doesn't match the effort. Not only that they spend themselves, but they are the voice of these neighborhoods, and that means your phone rings, like mine does, but at nights and weekends and stopped at gatherings, and so you're really on, for a lot of time. Of course, we looked at it, and we are a severe outlier in terms of having this format with part-time council people that they are not on insurance. So we are not setting a trend here. I think we're catching up to one, and I think certainly our council people who do a lot of work for not a whole lot of pay and in a part-time position, this is something that I believe is fair, and again really gets us caught up to what other cities in the state of Florida and in the region are doing.
Mayor, there was a drive-by shooting overnight, and it happened to be in the same spot off Fairfield that I think we covered a shooting there last weekend. And I asked you last week about the different groups shooting at each other and this and that, but when it comes to these shootings happening, it seems over and over in certain spots of the area. Does that concern you for the growth of the city?
Well, I think any time safety is questioned, I've probably said a million times during the campaign. Without safety, really, we don't have anything. We can talk about airport terminals, and we can talk about parking. We can talk about anything you want, but people aren't flying into a safe community. They're not moving to an unsafe community. That should always be job one for us. I don't think we're unique in the fact that we may have particular areas, particular zip codes that are going to see that have seen historically more crime, and so as a matter of fact, when the beats, I believe it's 11 beats that our police department are on, UWF goes in and analyzes that, and certainly even beats are drawn based on historical data, right? How much ground do you have to cover based on how much crime has happened there historically, and that's again not unique to us, but pretty much every police department we would do. So any time we ever have it's something that can make someone in this city feel unsafe, that it's important to us, and we want to do everything we can. I mentioned ShotSpotter. I think that's a perfect example. That's a data-driven analysis of where those 3 square miles are going to go, and it covers the area where we've seen the most gunshots or most reported gunshots, gun crimes, as well as an area that, when it comes to tourism, when it comes to like downtown, that it may not be the same amount of gun violence or crimes or shootings that have happened in that area, but we also understand the need for safety, and then when that's the one area in our city where thousands and thousands of people gather for something like a Pelican Drop or a gallery night, and so it's of the utmost importance to when it's that kind of concentration that we have protection. So, at the end of the day, we should be obligated to looking at what the data tells us and acting accordingly. If that means it's heavier police presence in areas that have historical issues, I mean, I think that's logical, and that's a very pragmatic approach for us to take, and something we'll continue to do.
Mayor, any serious nibbles on lots 4 and 5 at the Maritime Park?
Yeah, we're having. I've had conversations with the. What I would say is the current group that has the property under control. You remember you mentioned
Inspire?
Inspire had notified us in November. I believe it was November. I'm going off memory that the current deal as structured may not be able to work. A lot of things have changed since then. There was potential interest in or conversation that Triumph may start to play a role in affordable housing. There's of course Senate Bill 102 coming. So I think that's rekindled the flame a little bit with both Inspire and potentially others. So I have had a meeting with Inspire and of course with our team, and so we're due to have another one about what a potential deal would look like. They still have, regardless, they have control of those parcels. I believe it's 3, 4, 5,
Structured parking
6, and 8.
part of the conversation.
It is now, but the timing of it, what would 4 go first? Would 5 go first? Would 8 go first? Those kinds of things that haven't been ironed out. But I really come into this with, amnesia about whatever's happened before, and we look at this deal and we make sure that it's something that we expect the developers, need to make this a success for themselves. We understand and are not blind to that, but we also make sure that this is a good deal for the taxpayer and that it's meeting our needs. So that's the way I approach it. Not what was the deal before, here's what the arrangement was. It may stay the same, it may not. I'm coming in blind with a blank canvas, as I've said to them, and say, hey, let's see what's a deal that makes sense for you, makes sense for us. Because at the end of the day, what do we want? We want that property activated. That's what we want.
So there may be a scenario because of SB 102 that property could be used in some manner for affordable housing.
Yeah, think about whether it's Maritime Park or you just owned a private parcel, somewhere in the city. The second the adoption of Senate Bill 102 happened, the conversation has changed about what you can or can't do when it comes to attainable housing, right? So anybody, I think, pragmatically would say, or logically would say, hey, let's see what the rulemaking is going to be for Senate Bill 102 and what that looks like before we would just say we can't make this deal work. So that's a new factor that has come in, a new variable that has come in the last few months that changes the conversation. So normally you may say, well, if somebody said they were going to walk away in November and they've changed their mind, can you want to be able to trust that they're going to do what they say they're going to do? That would normally give you pause, but I certainly can see from any developer's perspective, the new addition of this changes the conversation completely. And so it's the property that's under their control, and so they certainly have the time and can be afforded the time to look at that and see how that potentially affects a deal.
Is Andrew Rothbetter still involved with the city in that property?
Yes.
In what capacity?
I believe the same capacity he's been in previous to this administration, which was
The agent.
for 4 and 5. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have y'all got an opinion on or any indication on like 102 for that situation with the city still owning the property but leasing it? Would that trigger 102 provision?
Yeah, we're looking into that. As a matter of fact, we're actually in our economic. You'll see when you look at the budget that we're adding an economic development housing position different than our housing department that works on a lot of the nuts and bolts of anything from with HUD and things like that. We're really looking at we know that we and expect a wave of interest because of Senate Bill 102, as well as we know there's already a wave of interest on the market rate side. So we want someone right there with, as I always say, with the pamphlet for the city of Pensacola that says, hey, thanks for looking at our city. Here, here's how we can invest, and that they would really become our resident expert at both Senate Bill 102 and really any other opportunities there would be to have people invest in our community. So that position is, should be coming up here pretty shortly. I should just looked at a job description, so we should be ready to go. But I don't know yet. I don't have details on does it or does it not affect 4 and 5. I think those are conversations that we're going to have. But what I mentioned earlier is, whether it was Inspire, whether it was someone else, at the end of the day, what we want those. There was a huge investment made many years ago in something that has been transformative already for our community. But the goal of that investment was for us to be able to reap the benefit of that investment. And that's in every year that goes by, 2 years that go by, that's that many less years that's paying property tax into the CRA for us to be able to fund further enhancements of our city. So I've got urgency to make something happen, but it's also we're gonna make sure that it's a smart deal for the city and a smart deal for the taxpayer. All right, all good. Thank you guys, appreciate it.